Welcome to The Holistic Nurse with your host, Peggy Smith. Peggy will introduce and educate her viewers about the differences between alternative, holistic, and complementary medical therapies. Her goal is to empower the lay medical consumer to learn how to advocate for themselves. So now, please welcome the host of The Holistic Nurse, Peggy Smith.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. Today, we're going to be talking about something that many of us seem to sacrifice during the holidays, and that is sleep. Typically, nurses are always sleep deprived, unfortunately, but as we're all getting through the holiday bustle and hustle, I just wanted to point out a few things about sleep hygiene today. And let you know that if you're missing sleep, you're actually could be damaging your brain in the future. um, Evidence-based research shows that dementia, even if it's not in your family, does accelerate uh, when you have habits like poor sleep hygiene. Just like poor nutrition and poor exercise, they're all kind of connected to each other. So if you're not getting the adequate amount of sleep, and for people that do shift work, which includes our safety officers, our police, firemen, nurses, and doctors, there's also a lot of research shows that typically we do live shorter lives than the average lifespan in our country. Um, and no matter what shift you're working, we know that between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., your cardiac output, which is kind of like how your blood is flowing through your heart and getting to your brain, is at the lowest it is in the 24-hour cycle. What that actually means is that, if you're working night shift and you just think you need that second wind and you go get that coffee at 3 a.m., it's a real thing happening. You're not just particularly tired, or you might be, but your heart is saying, I need a break between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Unfortunately, our jobs don't allow that. So today's topic does affect nearly all of us, every household, and it really does accelerate dementia. So it's one of those factors like nutrition and exercise that you have some control over, and you can take steps, especially if you know dementia's in your genes, to postpone that as long as you can. Um, it's about your brain's longevity, your memory, and your emotional stability. Uh, I know, if I was coming off a night shift and then I had 4 kids to get off to school, I didn't have a lot of patience for, I don't know where my lunchbox is, and, my project's not done, and all these other things, where maybe if I had woken up with a good night's sleep and an hour early enough to prepare the morning, I wouldn't be having emotional meltdowns for crazy things. But you are really at a serious risk for cognitive decline. Um, and it's just part of the self-care routines that we try to promote here on The Holistic Nurse. More than 1 in 3 adults actually do suffer consistently from sleep deprivation. And, sometimes you think, if you're a student in college and you've got that paper due the night before, so you figured, oh, in fact, that's where you learn how to be sleep deprived. You do your all-nighters, to get those papers done last minute. We seem to be a instant gratification and a last minute kind of society. No matter what good intentions you had to start the project, as soon as the teacher assigned it, uh, there's always something, like called life, that interferes with that. So we're going to be talking about the science and the spiritual body and your emotional body and your energetic body, just to understand how essential sleep is affects your mind and your ability to repair itself and rejuvenate. And my favorite expert, Dr. Gloria Warren, will be joining us for some of the scientific statistics and good information that we all need. So let's welcome Gloria. She joined us this morning.
Hi, guys. Sorry, let me
upside down. Can we turn it?
Nope.
Oops.
I don't know what's going on here. Okay, well, I'll just hold it this way. That's fine.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I hope it's not too cold there in your part of the country.
Oh,
Not
it's very cold today, but I love cold, so I'm fine.
so. I actually have Raynaud's disease, so cold's not one of my friends. But
Mm, mm.
um, why don't you explain to our viewers, why sleep is important and what it does for the brain?
Well, you can, believe it or not, you can die if you don't get enough sleep. And that's because of what it does to the brain.
Not
Long-term
because of
stress on the
accidents and
brain.
things like that that might happen with you not sleeping. It's actually a physiological death.
Yes. I believe in the fourth quarter, we were going to mention different accidents and the statistics. I mean, this is such a jam-packed show. I'm just amazed with how much you put into what you're going to talk about. There's different amyloid plaque that builds up in the brain when you don't have enough sleep. Your types of glands in your brain, they actually shrink, and you need that for intuition and common sense. And when you are sleep deprived, you don't have that common sense judgment, which can affect in all areas of your life, even in work patterns, in your driving situation, which, like I said, I think you were going to go over the statistics later. Um, it the amyloid plaque buildup can actually lead to Alzheimer's and different diseases as well. So it's something to really consider. You must have sufficient amount of rest. A lot of the clinical studies with the amyloid plaque was anything less than 7 hours. When you went down to 4 hours, the long-term damage to your brain was phenomenal. In the research studies, I believe you are going to have the references placed in the script section of the show so people can grab those references if they want to see them. um, a lot of medical behind this. It's so important, though, to get sleep. This is the main thing. You cannot skimp on the human body. The human body knows, even when you don't want to accept it, it knows it will respond in a negative way if you don't get enough sleep. So I think, Peggy, you are a perfect example with your work. I mean, the nursing that you do, and even last night you said you were up all night. And I mean, how does it affect everything, right? There's nothing you
It
can do
definitely
about it.
slows me down. I I used to joke I've been on night shift for 45 years of my nursing career. But in my original family, I had learned after finding my birth relatives, I was adopted. I learned that my birth mother was a night shift worker at a bar, and up until the age of 3, I went to work with her every night. So, uh, you know, night shift seems normal for me,
Oh,
but uh, my kids can tell you, how crazy I get. Or why don't you go to bed, mom? Or you need more sleep, and it's not us, mom. Uh, but, we tend to look at these different problems isolated from each other. And as we've talked in
mhm.
previous shows, uh, nutrition, I mean, it's a full time job and a half taking care of yourself. I don't know how we have time to
Right.
work, take care of our families. Um,
You're so worried about everyone else in your position that you forget about you. And uh, it's something to really consider. I remember the night shift. I loved the night shift in the hospital. Nobody was around, and you could just do your work and get it done. And it was just nice. It was quiet. But the problem is I was so sleep deprived because I would get home early. I would have my kids then to get off to school, and then not all of them were in school. So, I mean, I never had a chance to really catch up on sleep. And I know that's what you go through. And why don't you mention some of your symptoms firsthand? Because that is really where it's at.
well, I remember when my kids were preschool and early elementary. And we had a local hospital that was even nice enough to let me leave at 6 a.m. so that my husband could go to work on time. And as we're passing ships in the morning there, he'd give me a to-do list. Hey, pick this up at the cleaners. Would you go here, go here? And I looked at him like, excuse me, but this is nighttime for me. I'm going to bed. And So when I went to work the next night, I gave them my list. This laundry has to be done. You got to iron the school uniforms and make the lunches before I get home.
Yeah.
He got the message. Um, and it's not funny, but when it's your lifestyle, I guess you adapt by, and my sense of humor. I've always said we all need our sense of humor. We're not going to survive
God, yeah.
this crazy
Mhm.
world. Back in the day when we had the old-fashioned answering machines, I had a
Mhm.
recording of Sylvester the cat, and it said, "Suffering succotash, can a guy get any sleep around here?" And I was always forgetting to wake up to get the half-day kindergarten child home. And the secretary was always calling me at 12:30, "You forgot Michael again." And she thought I was the worst mother in the world. Um, Mind you, I was still breastfeeding and I had another baby, a toddler at home.
Mhm.
And the kind of things I used to do as a new mother was I put a comforter on the floor for nap time. And back then, it was not uncommon practice to use those baby leashes. I think as time evolved, we decided that might be child abuse. I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
got introduced to them when I lived in Germany, actually as an army brat. German mothers always had those harnesses for the baby, and you didn't worry about your toddler running off. But I would put everybody on the harness, and we all lay down in the comforter, take a nap. That was my nighttime, and whoever woke up first, which was never me, they'd start tugging and pulling, and that's you know. I would hope and pray for maybe a couple hours before I'd go back to work before my shift. But
Mhm.
you don't eat right. Types of things, and my kids were all attention deficit disorder, which is a combination of genes and our lifestyle back then. I'm sure still my lifestyle. But I was a cookie mom for the Girl Scouts. So very often my living room that time of year was full of cases of cookies. And 10 o'clock at night as I'm leaving, I'd grab some boxes to sell at work. The reality was we all ate them at work, and then I'd come home and maybe have a box for breakfast. And this is the holistic nurse talking with, I didn't have not an excuse. I didn't have all the knowledge I have now, but I still knew that that
Mhm.
probably wasn't a good idea. But those chocolate mint Girl Scout cookies, I was addicted. And
Yeah.
y- but you know, because you have bad habits, because you're not thinking organized and common sense, you end up not eating healthy, not eating, not even having regular meals. Um, and I'm lucky that I'm still alive at almost 70, considering those habits that nurses grow up with and work throughout their career. But some people aren't so lucky. And if you have any other familial comorbidities, diabetes, or any other autoimmune disorders, I found that when I'm sleep deprived in the wintertime, my asthma was always worse. Um, and my GI symptoms are usually worse because you're not on a regular habit of when you're supposed to get up in the morning and do your thing. And um, we're creatures of habit as much as we try to fight against it. I used to really try to convince my imaginary friends as a child that I was different, than everybody else. I didn't need to do those things. Um, and I'm sure the universe just laughed at me, many times. We're going
Yeah,
to take.
you never recover from sleep deprivation though unless you take the time out and actually schedule it in and you stick by it and you actually make yourself go to bed and take that time for you. And that's
We're going
important.
to take a break at that point, and it brings to mind something that the Harvard School of Medicine has, been pushing for years. We'll talk about that in a minute.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Hi, welcome back to The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and Dr. Gloria Warren. We're talking about sleep deprivation because I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, but maybe New Year's intentions and creating better habits for the new year might be something worth considering. We are approaching an opportunity for that. The Harvard School of Medicine for years now, more than 10, possibly more that I'm aware of, has recommended that, especially with the amount of blue light activity that we're exposed to, all of us, we go to bed with our phones, we've got TVs in our bedroom, all of that is really recommended, should be turned off an hour before bed every night, so that your brain can actually shut down or wind down. As long as we're going to bed with our phone on our pillow, and unless, like when I was on call for hospice and I had to keep my phone on, um, when I still kept that habit up afterwards, and it's like, well, one of my patients might pass during the night, and the answer I got, well, they're going to be just as passed in the morning. What are you going to do about it if you don't
Right.
have to go out and physically do something? Uh, it's part of our just. It's probably an addiction created by some of that electronic pulses and stuff that we're exposed to all the time. But
Yeah, you
even
can
if
turn
we
off
get
the blue light on your computer, and everyone should know that. If you go into the settings, you can turn off the blue light, so you won't have that there anymore. But on your phone, I'm not sure if you can do that. You may want to check into it. At least it's
well, it's
that much
probably out
less
there
you're
just,
getting.
because I mean, especially we get so many notifications, at least turn off your
Hmm.
notifications. You have to keep your phone on. And maybe I think there's a way to set, like, if you really had to hear from a family member or something like that, you could make them priority and turn everybody else off. But you also not only turn off your electronics an hour before sleep, you should have a regular sleep pattern, whether it's
Mm.
and we have different time frames for our age frames. Actually, at our age, I need less. I was happy to hear I need less sleep finally than I needed when I was younger and didn't get the extra sleep. You can't make up sleep loss. It just doesn't work that way. I've had weeks where I said, "Well, I'll get good sleep on the weekend," and it's only Tuesday. That doesn't work. It's
Mhm.
not clear-headed. I think they call that monkey brain in the recovery networks. You're thinking in your
Yeah.
monkey brain. If you can replace your sleep like that days in advance, or you can't store up sleep either. I know it's going to be a bad week, so I'll sleep 3 days in a row. Um, that doesn't work either. But
Yeah.
you should pick a time that works for you, and kind of make a pact with yourself every day, whether if you're going to go to bed between 10, you have to get up at 5:30, 6 in the morning, make sure you stick to that, which means turning off your emails and stuff at 9. And, when we get up to go to the bathroom, that you don't have to go see what notifications you missed in the 2 hours you were sleeping,
Right.
because
Right.
your brain just doesn't rest. Um,
Yeah.
and it's, kind of all connected to everything else we've been talking about for years. If some people have a habit of eating heavy snacks at night, um,
Hmm.
that is going to affect your sleep, and your gut is going to be struggling because
Right.
you
It'll
need,
raise your blood sugar.
it'll
And
raise
even
your
if you
blood
have a
sugar.
drink right before bed, it's going to raise your blood sugar. Your brain's not going to want to sleep. And then if you've had long term or even a couple weeks, your medulla oblongata, your amygdala, your hippocampus, they're all going to start shrinking. So your brain is not going to function as like it should to go to sleep. So watch
And I
those
know with the
snacks.
PET scans and CAT scans of
Hmm.
current dementia patients, we already know that the brain has shrunk significantly in dementia patients that have been through testing. Um, and you've mentioned the same thing happens, with some of our nutrition deficits and things like that. Um, I guess there are no shortcuts to taking care of ourselves. Can you think of any?
The shortcuts themselves, no. You really just need to take the time and take the time out for yourself so you can function at a better level around others and help others further. It's not always you have to start with you to focus on the long term of helping others if that's the situation you're in, like you, Peggy, as a nurse. You need to help other people. You're no good to them if you can't keep yourself um, hydrated with good nutrition and healthy, as well as getting a sufficient amount of sleep.
So, and that applies to not even just, and we keep politics off the show, but nurses are no longer considered professional. I had to just bring that in. We are professional, we know that, but
Hmm.
caregivers too. Especially people can't afford uh, nursing homes, and the way they could for government isn't going to be paying
Yeah.
for that. Um, so, you really have to plan your life is the best way to say it, I guess. Um, I used to think that I thrived on chaos because it gave me an explanation that, didn't make me feel so weird, when I was feeling exhausted. But
Hmm.
nobody thrives on chaos. We get through those chaotic moments, but there's a price to pay. And usually during chaos, we're not resting, we're not eating, we're not exercising, we're not thinking of
Right.
ourselves first.
Your brain
And
goes in fight or flight. So your brain is not going to function. You'll actually decrease circulation to your brain in fight or flight and increase it to your muscles. And that will also draw the circulation away from your internal organs. So everything with fight or flight, which can be triggered from sleep deprivation, hinders your whole body from oxygen levels and the sufficient blood and nutrients it needs. You're actually going to end up with further plaque and more chance of getting dementia and later on Alzheimer's because of sleep deprivation and the fight or flight.
so, would you think, in your experience with your research and all, if somebody knows this is in their family, um, I've had patients say, "Well, it's my family. I had no choice. It's me in the future."
Yeah,
Can you speak on that?
I'm a very
Yes.
big
Yeah.
believer, even if it's in your genetics and in your family, dementia or both, Alzheimer's. Um, I'm a very big believer that genetics will not fail and fall back onto those situations without a trigger. Sleep deprivation is one of the biggest triggers you have. Chemicals in your environment, sleep deprivation, they're all right up there. And without the sufficient amount of sleep, you can trigger those genetics to kick in. They have people nowadays getting Alzheimer's, like by the time they're 30, they're starting to show signs. And a lot of it is either sleep deprivation or chemicals in the environment. And each case is different, of course.
Right.
But there's a lot of research on this, a lot of proven facts about it, and you you even if you have it in your genes does not mean you'll get it. You need a trigger for that to happen. So sleep deprivation is a huge trigger.
Yeah, I remember I've mentioned in the past this particular family. I went to pronounce a hospice patient. It was a woman in her early 40s. Her son was only 20. Her husband had passed the year before with a very aggressive familial dementia that comes in your 20s, and you maybe have 5 to 10 years tops. And there was nobody with this young man. And, I said, "Don't you have any family or anything?" It was so sad. And I said, "A girlfriend?" He said, "I can't go into a relationship and say this is my future," and I just felt so bad. Uh, And that was like 20 years ago. I'm hoping by now with that situation, maybe research has improved. Medical research is so important to help some of these things um, that are really disabling us. Um, and the to make sure we're not missing anything here. I guess. Well, we've already talked about how the sleep. Ac what I find in day to day life with patients that live sleep deprived lifestyles, they seem to think that they can hurry up and do what they have to do to have that longer life. And, it's like we know that doing Sudoku, word puzzles, playing chess, games like that, playing music, they say older people should learn a new instrument or a new language just to keep your brain. um, I had a good friend years ago. She was 98 when she passed. And I said, what's your secret? She said, I make sure I learn one new thing every day. She was always reading, she was keeping her mind active. And
Hmm.
she ended up losing the battle during the COVID years, but she was an amazing woman. She was a head of nephrology at a major children's hospital. And when they had her memorial, there were students from three generations, just honoring her. It was just amazing the difference you make in your life when you're healthy enough to make contributions. And um, we're going to take another quick break and talk a little bit about nutrition that'll help repair your brain if you're already on the wrong track. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, welcome back to this week's Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and Dr. Gloria Warren. And we're talking about sleep deprivation, and not in a negative way, but we just want to educate people on how it can keep us healthier. What would you like to share, Gloria?
I wanted to mention the what ifs. You were mentioning, the research and everything, and new research is out there. I'm just thinking of the self-sustainability scenario that I discuss on my show. You can't wait if you're having these problems. You need to find answers yourself. Do the research, do the footwork, such as, okay, you were talking Sudoku and things like that. Sudoku does help, and they've shown that. But what if you did deep breathing exercises while you were doing the Sudoku to get more oxygen in your bloodstream, to get more oxygen around your brain while you were doing the Sudoku? Maybe that would have a more healing effect. Same as everything else you do. What if you do deep breathing, or you put your head down and get a little extra circulation, face down, of course. So you get a little extra circulation to your brain before you get up in the morning, just remember to lay down and not so you don't get dizzy. Lay down for a couple minutes before you stand up after that. Always, when you get up from a chair, from bed, or anywhere, always lead with your chest. Inhale, you know, as you're getting up. And guess what? You'll stop. Some people get dizzy as they stand up. You'll be amazed on how it can help that situation. You're feeding extra oxygen to your brain. So it will also help with sleep deprivation. But you need to set that time to yourself so you get sufficient amount of sleep. And I don't mean once a week. Oh, I'll sleep in on Sunday, leave me alone. I know, Peggy, you probably have done that yourself. Well, I'm
No,
not
we
going to
have
be,
dogs. I don't get
you
to
know,
sleep in sleeping.
yeah, I'm sure you probably don't with your little patients at home even. But people out there, I hear it a lot. Well, I'll catch up on my sleep,
Yeah.
on Thursday. I'm home Thursday. No, it doesn't work that way. Those repetitive sleep deprivation scenarios, day after day, one day here, one day there, they all have an accumulative effect. So the main thing is get extra oxygen to your brain, get extra sleep, and more often than not, because you need to plan it in. Turn that TV off, put those cell phones down, just like Peggy mentioned before. It is so important. Put the cell phone on the other side of the room, so you're not getting the frequencies off of it. You can check the frequencies, by the way, on all your cell phones now. If you go to the settings and there's different ways to check online, you'll find there's a procedure to do. It'll say, oh, you have to hold it 3 inches from your head, or you have to hold it a foot from your head, or 2 millimeters, whatever. Every phone's different. But everything will affect your brain. Sleep deprivation is so drastically inhibitory to your brain function as well as circulation. So please, think about self-sustainability. You need self-sustainability to help others in the long run. So you're not being selfish, in other words. So go ahead and think about setting that
Well,
time aside
it
for you.
also comes down to being proactive and empowering yourself to take responsibility for your health. Because many parts of the country, it takes, we were talking earlier, it can take a couple months or longer, even in our country, to get a specialist that you might need or to get scheduled for a procedure with all the hospitals that have been closing locally. And I'll never forget the woman in South Carolina. She had had a very brittle diabetic history, had an endocrinologist for 30 years. Her insurance changed and she wasn't allowed to use him and couldn't afford any other options. She lived on a farm, no transportation. She was almost 80. Church people she depended on to go, and the nearest doctor that was in her system was 3 hours away. And, in that case, I said, you can appeal your insurance company if you're in that situation, even nowadays, um, because there's not a one size fits all medical plan for everybody. Regardless, and if accessing insurance that covers enough things that you need to be covered, you can do a lot of things taking care of yourself to not need those doctors as often. And when you're more alert, you have enough oxygen and hydration, we always go back to the water, um, then you're going to be more aware if a problem shows up and you're going to be able to get help soon, earlier than rather stage 4 levels. Um, Medicine still does a lot for us, and we're not saying not, to just forget it. But we want to take advantage of things that we can control and take care of ourselves.
Right.
And it
Western
saves.
medicine is great for things, but there are other alternatives as well that you can use complementary things to for Western medicine, or you can actually do alternative types of things, Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, different things to help your brain in different ways. And that will actually help even with sleep deprivation, as well as dementia and Alzheimer's. There's a lot of research on this, a lot of proven facts that we're saying. If it wasn't true, I wouldn't tell you it was. And you have to realize it takes more than one type of medicine to actually cure or help or decrease the progression of any type of disease. So please, look into it, check for yourself. With AI out there and the internet, I mean, there's no reason why you can't get some of these answers at your fingertip, but you can always contact one of us too if you need. But
Absolutely.
Be
Um,
self-sustainable and do it yourself.
and you have to feed your brain good nutrition like you feed the rest of other parts of your body. Omega 3s, they reduce inflammation and they support repairing of the brain. Magnesium calms the nervous system. Um, Tryptophan rich foods. We just had turkey dinners, and everybody took a nice nap afterwards. Um, there's dark leafy vegetables. They decrease a lot of oxidative stress. But if you're already on certain blood thinners or things like that, you need to make sure that the pharmaceutical part of your lifestyle is not contradicted to any of the things that we do suggest. And mindfulness and meditation. That doesn't cost anything to learn. You don't need to take expensive classes or anything. Those resources are out, but it does reduce insomnia because you're more rested. It makes you less reactive to life, which when you're not so reactive, you're less likely to have accidents, whether you're in your car or not. Uh, and your stress hormones are lower, which if you're feeling better, both as caregivers, nurses, or, just your everyday citizen, learning how to tune out some of the stress, and mindful meditation can help you focus on what's important in your life.
Yeah.
Exercise, you don't have to join a jogging club or swim 20 laps a day, but arthritis, osteoporosis, exercise is the best medicine for osteoporosis. And there's all kinds of common access information about that. And most of the side effects of the osteoporosis family of drugs are really brutal for most people. So it's important to take control. Um, some people, when they're having sleep problems, they're quick to call the doctor and I need an Ambien or something. And most of the prescription sleep aids are very habit forming and dangerous.
Mhm. Yeah.
They
Especially the
they
new
wake you up,
the new
hangover in the
research.
morning. Yeah. A lot of people will say melatonin, "Oh, it doesn't I tried that, it didn't work for me." Well, if you tried it 1 or 2 nights, or maybe it wasn't the right dose of melatonin or the right delivery of melatonin.
Yeah, and
Um,
new research just came out on melatonin. New research last week actually was publicized that they found, though, that long-term use of melatonin can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's. So if you're going to use a sleep aid like that, you need to be more of a short-term person, maybe up to 6 months. But if you can use it for now, it is a good Band-Aid, so to speak. My favorite, my favorite thing for sleep is valerian root. It calms the nerves, calms your mind, but you still have clear thinking, and that's wonderful. But with the calm nerve and calm mind, your nerves feel better and you can actually fall asleep more easily.
we have a visitor.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, I'm so sorry. Service dog.
that's okay, he's
So, yeah.
adorable. Um, so, people over 50 naturally produce less melatonin, and I guess maybe
Hmm.
general public doesn't know that we have melatonin in our system already. Um, so it's not like we're trying to suggest you introduce something. Uh,
Right.
but but if all aspects of your self care, the exercise, the hydration, just being aware, listening to your body, knowing when something doesn't feel right,
Hmm.
and nightcaps are not a recommended way, I think, of calming down to relax before you go to sleep. There's a lot of
Yeah. The
you know
sugar.
not just the sugar, but even people that are not genetically predisposed to alcoholism or
Hmm.
anything. Um, Sometimes I remember new out of nursing school, like doctors and lawyers that would never think that they had a problem, and they really didn't have a psychological problem, but maybe they'd come into the hospital for surgery and they were there 5 days, and all of a sudden they're acting like crazy people, totally out of character, and it took us a while to realize, oh, they're going through withdrawal. And it was only one, I only have 1 glass of wine a night, but for some people, that's physiologically enough. So you have to be aware before you're planning medical procedures too. Let your doctors know when you're talking about anesthesia, what your habits are, and they're not going to judge you. They're just going to keep you safer with complete knowledge. Um, energy techniques, clearing the chakras, things like that. Those are all very inexpensive, excellent ways of, you can get rid of a headache in 60 seconds, actually, with some of the energy techniques. And a lot of times your headaches are because of too much sugar in your diet or too much of something else that you shouldn't, that's not
Caffeine
particularly
withdrawal.
withdrawal. Yes.
Yeah, that can
Um,
do it too. I have a lot of good uh one-stop shop things. Just like you were saying, Peggy. Um you need energy, you need exercise, you need good nutrition, you need a lot of things. If you do just some yoga, a little yoga on the floor, you get some exercise, increase the oxygen to your brain, you increase your energy, and the big real kicker here is you decrease the cellular degeneration in your body. Do you know what that means? I mean, that actually means you won't age as quickly. I mean, how can you go wrong? You know, it's
Absolutely.
fantastic.
you know. And we also, real quick before we take our last break, there's, of course, my mind, because I'm sleep deprived, just lost its thought. We'll come
Mhm.
right back in 30 seconds and we'll finish off.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Hi, welcome back to the Holistic Nurse with Dr. Gloria Waring and Peggy Smith, the Holistic Nurse. We're talking about sleep deprivation. And as we close our show, I want to remind people we're coming on the time period of lots of office parties, um, long family things. If you are sleep deprived, meaning you get less than 4 hours a day, you have a 12% higher crash risk. And you combine that with a full stomach from your office party and the alcohol that, everybody
And
shares.
the ice on the road.
Forget the ice on the road, but, it's as a hospice nurse, and, many people naturally die and pass during the holidays, and it's bad. It's sad enough. But accidents are real. And I want to bring, the Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They're doing, good advertising and reminding people when you're sleep deprived, you're less likely to cope with just your day-to-day normal stress. And that means, in fact, I'm seeing more road rage already this week, just since Thanksgiving. Road rage is just day and night. That doesn't help anybody. And there's a lot of people suffering silently, with, their own private, suicidal and struggling with, challenging thoughts like that. And sometimes it's because they've been up for days, obsessing over what the problem is. A lot of times you can find a solution to whatever it is you're so worried about uh, after a good night's sleep. Sometimes people say, I'll make an important decision after I sleep on it. That's a habit actually our grandparents often had. Um, but just remember, we only have a couple minutes to go. Please be aware of just your family, your friends, even people you might encounter, their struggles. Please be safe on the road. Looks like Farmer's Almanac says we're going to have a worse winter than we've had the last couple of years. And
Mhm.
I want to remind everybody the suicide hotline is 988 if you know somebody who's struggling or you need some help that way. Gloria, what would you like to say to close our show?
Yeah, I just want to add one tip. When you're sleep deprived, just like Peggy said, your brain cannot deal with everyday stress. So what it does is it stores it. And then when it stores it, it all builds up and it keeps building and building and building. So if you come to a point where you just are at that point, you don't know what to do. There is the suicide hotline. Yes, you can call and talk with them. Now, for self-sustainability, you can also decide, I know this is going to happen, so I have a plan in place. I am going to do this or do that. I'm going to, turn some music on, dance, and just think things out, or sit and meditate and do some meditation. And you need to do things for yourself, so to let your mind unwind. And then if you get to the point where you're finally moving forward, you can always change your mind. Just deflect your mind temporarily. Put some time aside that evening to think again, or maybe the next day. And you've got to go through that. You can't ignore your brain, and you got to get enough sleep. So if
And
you
I
need to get
think
a hold of me,
I've learned
sorry,
in
go
hospice that the strongest human desire is to survive and thrive.
ahead. Hmm.
Uh,
Right.
but we all go through those challenging times, and you're not thinking as clearly. You're not seeing all your options at that time. 988 is also not just for suicidality, but it can hook you up with local mental health services that are
Hmm.
appropriate, help keep you safe. And if a lot of people say, oh, starting in September, I know the holidays are going to be horrible. They're like psyching themselves to be depressed around the holidays. Say, reframe that thinking and say, yeah, typically the holidays are rough, but this year I'm going to go feed on Christmas Day, feed Christmas dinner at the soup kitchen or something. That really helps.
Learn gratitude too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and focus on
Gratitude can help you
gratitude.
through that.
Yeah. So, Gloria, would you like to leave a number? How to reach you? Gloria's show is on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
2
And
p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. My phone, Medical Intuitive Insights with Dr. Gloria C. Warren, and my phone number is 715-892-7500. You can always text me if you need, or call if you need to as well. So any questions for me, or if you want to have questions for Peggy and forget, how, I can always divert you to Peggy then too.
well, thank you for joining us, everybody. Please have a safe holiday. And
Mhm.
just the New Year's is going to come, no matter how bad this year is. And it's always a good time to, symbolically have a fresh start. So plan on that and take care of yourself. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
This has been The Holistic Nurse with host Peggy Smith. Tune in each week where you're encouraged to send in questions and receive private responses and suggestions if appropriate. Thursdays, 1 p.m. Eastern.